What is the best team in the NFL? Everyone has their own answer to this question. Some say the Chiefs.
Holmes gets away before the hit. What a catch!
Others say the Bucks.
Brady deep down the middle for Evans. Inside the 30 of Carolina, and Mike Evans is down to the 21.
Some even throw in the Packers.
Rodgers on the move. End zone for Adams. He's got it. Touchdown, Packers!
But I've always been more interested in answering where everyone else ranks. And after a couple days of thinking, I created a system with the help of the Bottom Line Views player rankings and ranked all 32 NFL teams from order 32 to 1. Today, I'll be making the case for the 2021 Las Vegas Raiders for the 28th best team in the NFL. As a lot of you may know, I am a full-on Raiders fan, and it pains me to see the Raiders rank this goddamn low. But sadly, I see why they've gotten this bad. The reason this offense isn't ranked as highly as it was in 2020, being borderline top 10, is because of the lack of a dominant receiver, or even potentially a good receiver. You see, Henry Ruggs and John Brown as your number 1 and number 2, most of the time isn't going to work out because, well, John Brown isn't a top 40 receiver. Henry Ruggs, we don't know what he is, but he probably isn't a top 40 receiver either. Even though you have Darren Waller, he's going to be playing about 25% on pass blocking downs, and he's not going to make as much of a difference as a number 1 receiver would. And it is just, it's in today's passing oriented league, you can't have this bad of a receiving core and expect to really be a great offense, especially with Nelson Aguilar being gone. And the other thing that this offense lacks is a dominant or even just a good offensive line. All the losses in free agency, you think about Rodney Hudson, you think about Gabe Jackson, you think about Trent Brown. It's just too much, too many losses for this offensive line to really bounce back from. It's going to take a bit to get this cohesion back because the squad's been together for a long time. And I'm not sure Leatherwood and all the backups are the answer to that problem. Let's talk about Joshua Jacobs, one of the best running backs in the NFL, even though he's only borderline top 10. But yeah, he's just really good. He just puts his nose down and he gets like 3 yards a carry, or not 4 yards. Well, I don't remember what his stats were, but it wasn't that good efficiency-wise. But that's mostly because of the scheme they play in, because he gets so much volume. He isn't allowed to try and break out and make big plays in this offense. But overall, he's a pretty good running back. Derek Carr, one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL, and I will say one of the most underrated quarterbacks in the NFL. Stop saying that Derek Carr is bad, because he's not bad, guys. He's one of the best in the NFL. And I freaking love the guy, but I couldn't put him top 10. Mitch couldn't put him top 10. There's just too many good quarterbacks nowadays. But yeah, he does basically everything well. The one major criticism is probably that he doesn't sling it down a field enough. You know, he doesn't unleash the beast, if you know what I mean. Especially with the kind of offense that he has. He has Darren Waller, Henry Ruggs, and John Brown, where he could just sling it downfield, but he doesn't do that all the time, which is not the worst thing in the world. But yeah, if these younger players develop on the offensive line and receiving core, I could see this offense being top 15, borderline top 10 again, possibly, if Alex Leatherwood's a stud, Henry Ruggs is a stud. Well, we don't know that yet. In total, they scored the 20th ranked offense in the NFL. Not great, but pretty solid. Yeah, not much else to say except Darren Waller is a beast. Josh Jacobs is good. Derek Carr is good. O-line isn't very good, and the receiving core isn't very good. Okay, so on to the defense. Ranked 32nd, the worst ranked defense on the scale. This is mostly due to the lack of playmakers on the defense, because this system ranks playmakers above all else, top 32 players, right? And the Raiders just don't have that. They have Nick Witkowski, who is one of the more underrated linebackers in the NFL. He's good in pass coverage. He's good in run. He's good in the run game, and he's not great in either, but he's good. Not very playmaker like Yannick Ngakoue, the 33rd ranked edge in the NFL. He's pretty good and pass. He is the closest thing to a playmaker, I think, on this offense or on this defense, because what he does do in passing downs is electric most of the time, but his run defense, it leaves something to be desired. It's pretty bad, and it can put this Raiders team in bad positions on the edge, especially against quarterbacks like Lamar Jackson that are going to, tear it apart. But Max Crosby, he's going to be good on the other side. He's better in the run game, but similar kind of player. Very good pass rusher, not too great of a run defender. Casey Hayward, the 32nd best corner, according to Mitch, and he's pretty solid as a corner, but he's not a playmaker. We need more playmakers on this defense. I wanted just a big name on this freaking defense to complement all these young guys, all these okay guys, but we have too many okay. We need more big bang, you know what I mean? Jonathan Abram, Trayvon Moehrig, unranked, both pretty bad. I don't know if Trayvon Moehrig's going to be, but he should be good, but we don't know that. In total, this offense is going to be very solid in the run game, possibly, and just atrocious in the passing game due to their horrible secondary. Casey Hayward is their number one player in the secondary, and he barely ranked within the top 32. It's not a very good secondary. Okay, the what if segment. Okay, so for this what if segment, I wanted to discuss what would happen if all of the busts that Jon Gruden's drafted in the last 3 years were actually just solid, because the Raiders have had this problem the last 3 years during this rebuild where Jon Gruden and Mike Mayock have this pretty solid plan and just execute it horribly. Let me explain. The trading Khalil Mack obviously didn't work out, but if they were to draft the right players with those picks, Cleveland Farrell they would have gotten, because Khalil Mack makes the team worse. Makes the team worse. Khalil Mack in the Cleveland Farrell pick, Jonathan Abram, and the Josh Jacobs pick. I think those were the ones. It might have been Damon Arnett, but what I'm getting at is that they didn't get equal return for what they traded for, and they could have gotten equal return if they just drafted the right players, and they didn't. So they did that. They've basically done that this entire drafting period of the last 3 years. But I wanted to see if all those players were just okay, like average, like top 20 fine players, what this offense and defense would look like. So on offense, right, you got Henry Ruggs, you got Leatherwood. That's the only two players they drafted offense. They've really hammered down defense because of how bad it's been and in the first and second round, but obviously it hasn't worked out. So if Henry Ruggs and Leatherwood were pretty good, solid players, the offense would go from 20th to 16th. Not a big jump, but a jump, right? It would solve that thing I said about the receivers and getting a good Nelson Aguilar replacement, and your offensive line would be pretty okay. It would be like top 20, top 15 maybe. On defense, 22nd, guys. If they just drafted okay, solid players, they would not even great players, not even amazing players, not even good players, just fine players that you could put in and just be like, okay, that's a good starter. Or a fine starter, it would be the 22nd ranked defense, because you got Jonathan Abram, Trayvon Mullen, Cleveland Farrell, Trayvon Moehrig, and Damon Arnett. I don't know how good Trayvon Moehrig, I don't remember how to say his name, or Leatherwood will be, but assuming that they're okay to average, it will take this much of a jump, because, well, the players that they've drafted have just been bad. I mean, it's pretty obvious that they've just been bad. Josh Jacobs is the only one that's been good. Cleveland Farrell is probably number 2. He's been okay. Henry Ruggs is unproven, and we don't know what's going on with these new guys. But yeah, this would solve our secondary because they've hammered in that secondary. Trayvon Mullen, Abram, Morig, and Arnett. If they were all okay players, it would be a pretty solid secondary, along with a pretty solid front seven, making the defense just a pretty solid unit altogether, with a lot of good players, a lot of solid players around the field. No real discernible hole, except for maybe interior D-line. The total was 18th instead of 28. Why it's 18th? We got a similar situation to where we were a year ago. Borderline playoff team, pretty good offense, not too great defense, even though it would be a lot better. And it would be a pretty solid unit. I would be happy to have this team instead of the team that we have right now. This is just assuming that if these players develop into what they were drafted to be, this could still happen. If these players develop into what they were drafted to be next year, in the next couple months, or next month here, then this could be a reality. We could see about the same good team that we saw last year, but I'm not really sure that will happen because, well, it's been a couple years for these players now, and a lot of them haven't turned out. So what did you guys think? I thought it was pretty interesting to see that because, well, I don't know. Maybe it's just because I'm a Raider fan, but yeah. Peace.
Don't forget to subscribe.